Chapter 20 75 Days After. I slept a toss and turn dreamless sleep and woke on Maddie's couch in the basement to her phone ringing in that high pitched loop over and over and over again. I propped myself up, groggy and a little bit lightheaded, my muscles sore. The ringing stopped just as Maddie said, "Morning, sunshine," her voice rising from the floor where she was tucked into a green sleeping bag. "I feel awful," I said, as a headache slammed behind my eyes. "Like I slept on my cymbals, like I ran a marathon." "The life of a rock star," she said. "We forgot to eat dinner. Plus, you refused to wear earplugs." She stretched her arm over her head and moaned, "And I don't know about you, but my shoulders feel like they're on fire. Who knew moving band equipment was so taxing? I guess I'm supposed to get in shape before our next gig." She was right. My body ached and my ears were ringing as I worked my way through my memories of the night before. I thought about kissing Isaac first, and then about the fight with Beckett. Maddie was up and stuffing her sleeping bag back into its sack. "Brunch, right?" she said. "ASAP, I'm starved. Let's call Rabbit and see if he'll pick us up." I nodded, and then the phone started again, so I said, "Not it," and she said, "Me neither." "Where's your mom?" I asked, and she told me her mom was at work. But the ringing wouldn't stop, so eventually Maddie crossed the room to grab the phone, an old see-through handset she'd won in third grade selling magazine subscriptions. It lit up when it rang, and as kids, we loved inspecting all the parts, the wires and circuit boards and levers. We'd try to guess which piece would move when we punched the buttons. We'd used it for prank calls when we were in elementary school, then first to call boys we had crushes on when we were old enough. By the time I was on my feet, she was holding the phone out toward me. "It's Beckett." The first thing he said was, "I'm not talking to you, just for the record." And I said, "Okay." And then he said, "But your mom called my cell. She said she tried Maddie's a bunch of times, but no one answered. She sounded pretty upset, Cal. You should probably call her back." "Upset how?" "I don't know, like crazy upset. Just call her, okay?" She picked up on the first ring, the first half ring, really, and I knew right away she'd heard something about my dad. "It's me," I said. "Is everything okay?" I was back on the couch with the cordless, and Maddie was upstairs taking a shower so I could have some privacy while I made the call. My mother cried in that quiet kind of cry, muffled by her attempt to sound brave and in control. "Where are you?" she asked. I told her I was still at Maddie's. We'd slept late. We ignored the phone. We'd heard from Beck. "Is everything okay?" I asked again. Outside the basement window, voices spoke Spanish on the street, the quick words flicking off their tongues and seeping through the walls, laughter and low tones before the sound of laughter again. "Mom, is everything okay?" "Yes," she said, then, "No, I'm not sure." And then everything slowed down. The voices as they drifted up the street, the sound of the shower running as the water slid through the pipes above me, a bus as it brought people to and from Saturday morning brunches or coffee dates. And finally, my mother's words, sluggish and mangled, as she said, "The police called, Callie. They found a body." Then, even slower, crawling through the wires from her phone to mine, "A man," she said. The syllables hopeless, like a whisper of the final verses of the saddest song ever written. Dark hair. There were glasses, too. Black wire frames near the body. I imagined white teeth and bones. I listened to her crying, the pitch of her inhale and the sigh of her exhale, the white noise in the breaks of her voice, the way she started to say something and stopped, a dampness in her throat. "I'm going to the coroner's office," she said eventually, "and I want to go alone." "Where?" I asked. "They found it where?" "Dolores Park." "Dolores Park near Soma, near his last job site." "Callie, it doesn't mean that it's him," she said, the slow motion giving way to a quickening in her voice as she breathed in, desperately trying to convince me, to convince herself too, probably. I imagined her at the kitchen table, wiping her nose on her sleeve and chewing her nails. The body wasn't, the face was too, "Don't," I said. "I just mean that they couldn't be sure," she told me. It wasn't clear. They're running tests on his hair and fingernails now. His hair tangled and overgrown, as if he hadn't gotten a trim since we'd last seen him. "Come home," she said. "Wait for me here. I'll call you as soon as I know anything, but I want to go alone." Before, On the Saturday after my very first gig, he would have been home, waiting for me. How'd it go? He would have asked as soon as I'd made my way to the kitchen. He may he may have been eating a snack, a clementine with slices of sharp cheddar cheese, a glass of chocolate milk maybe. No, that wasn't it. Instead, he would have said, "You were amazing, my little girl holding her own in a band," because he never would have missed the gig. He would have been there, even if I hadn't invited my parents to come watch me play. We would have sat at the table, rehashing the night, and then I would have asked him to make me a grilled cheese sandwich, a little mayo, a slice of avocado, and lots of butter in the frying pan. He would have told me I kicked ass and wouldn't have mentioned the lousy second set. Halfway through the sandwich, he might have reminded me that anything worth doing takes time to do right. Each gig would get better, the music would become more consistent. He would have said that he was proud of me. After, the house was empty when I got home. Just a note on the counter in my mother's cursive. I'll call as soon as I know anything. Stay home. Love you. She said to wait at the house for the call, but I couldn't possibly wait there, so I tied on my sneakers and decided I needed to run. Shorts, long sleeve t shirt, halfway out the door when the phone rang. Are you okay? Maddie asked when I answered. You were gone when I came back downstairs. My heart popped beneath my breastbone. 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. The kitchen had grown inexplicably small as I counted down the seconds until I could get out of the house. I needed air, movement. I had to come home, I told her, but I'm on my way out for a run. I couldn't say the words yet, not aloud. A body in Dolores Park. I cut her off quickly when she asked about my mom's call, and I told her I'd left because I didn't feel well. But now you're going for a run? She asked. I'm fine, I said, really. She asked again about my mom's call, but I was telling her I had to go, already hanging up the receiver before she had a chance to say goodbye. I headed out the door and caught the Divisadero bus to Fell Street, my 8.67 mile loop. I skipped the stretching and started into the park, past the Conservatory of Flowers and out towards Stowe Lake. As I ran, I told myself everything I could remember about my dad, afraid it was the last time I'd be able to think of him while still hoping, still having the chance to see him again. His allergy to shellfish, the slurping sound and the peanut butter toast for breakfast, but I needed more than that. On Saturdays, they closed the main road that ran through the park so there were no cars, but the streets were crowded with rollerbladers and couples walking dogs, people drinking coffee and wandering the grounds like everything was normal. A body, a man's body, in Dolores Park. I thought of how much it hurt my feelings when he'd take his motorcycle out on the weekends without me, wanting a day to himself and the freedom to ride without having to worry about without having the worry of his kid on the back of the bike. He'd be gone for hours alone, heading north toward the redwoods, or sometimes he'd go with a friend, Roland, the guy my dad bought bike parts from when his motorcycles needed work. He'd come home with sunburned hands, smiling and feeling like $1,000,000, he'd say, hurting my feelings even more. I remembered the way I'd sit in my room, waiting to hear him pull into the garage, angry, but waiting for him still. I passed the DeYoung Museum and the Lloyd and then Lloyd Lake, my fists pumping and my heart racing as I dodged a tourist taking photos, a man walking with headphones over his ears, and a woman on her cell talking too loud. I passed boys in skinny jeans and sunglasses, girls in long skirts clutching cardigan sweaters around their bodies, the cool air of the nearby water spraying windblown bursts through the park. And I just kept moving. The thing is, when a person goes missing in a small town, telephone trees are set in motion, calling the community into action. Phones ring and news spreads lightning fast between families, down main streets and country roads, through church basement meetings. The talk passes between women ordering meats and cheeses from the deli counter at the local grocery. The story spreads from department store aisles, from mouth to mouth to mouth, into living rooms until everyone, gas station attendants and school teachers and tellers at the bank, until everyone knows. And then they find him. I'd seen it in movies and read it in books set in small towns. In the end, the locals pull together, hold a late night vigil with candles and posters and flyers, and then they find the person who's gone missing. But in a city, even a small one like ours, which is only 7 miles by 7 miles, that's not how it works. The Chronicle might run an article buried on page 6. The local news station might cover it on the evening show, primetime. But even so, no one will respond. A city is too busy to slow down enough to save a man like my dad. And in that way, San Francisco failed me. The city that my parents swore was the only place on earth they could ever live. In the end, that city bailed on my family and didn't find him quick enough. I pounded past the disc golf course and then by Middle Lake, north again at the fork. Sweat dripped down my back as last night's mascara ran into my eyes, burning my vision with brown charcoal smears. But I kept running. I ran through a leg cramp and ignored the racing in my chest. I just kept going. And the way he always let me win Scrabble, even when I was old enough to know better, that he always bugged me too. Like letting me win was a way of showing that had always bugged me too. Like letting me win was a way of showing me that he cared about me when really I'd wish he'd just play fair and honest. I wanted to lose if that's how the score turned out. That would have been the best way for him to show me respect. He shouldn't have faked it and ignored the chance for triple word scores when his turn came, so my name would always end up circled in red ink on the scorecard. Winner, he'd write, with a check mark, like I believed him. And what about Elizabeth Martin? Elizabeth, who was 20 years old and sleeping in the bed with her mother when the earthquake hit in 1906. The two of them clutching each other at 5 in the morning, imagining the end of the world happening on Wednesday, April 18th, as their bed slid around the room like a boat at sea, whipping from one wall to the other like a kite caught in the wind. That's what family really is, holding on in the worst situations, not up and disappearing. April 18th, the same day my dad went missing, 75 days ago, counting the day he vanished, which I did. My feet pounded the pavement and my head throbbed as I passed the beach chalet, but I kept running, the water just there on the other side of Highway 1. I thought of the man I'd been envisioning all those weeks, the man from the photo, navigating the destruction of the earthquake in a 1906 version of my city. I wondered if it was him and if it was possible that the images were more than just strings of imaginings I'd tied together. My dad rescuing survivors from the debris and helping strangers track down family members, befriending those still struck by the shock of the earthquake and providing some kind of comfort. He would have been good at that. The temperature dropped then, the air cooled by the ocean, with the salt and the wind rocking off the Pacific. And the thumping between my ears grew louder than it had ever been before as I pushed forward, off the path and over the grass, longing for that water, wanting the ice of it on my legs, my arms, the way it would numb my skin, my fibers, my cells. The thumping grew even louder than those waves on the other side of the highway, louder than the honking horn when it came, louder than the sound of tires shrieking against asphalt in front of me as the car kept getting closer, closer, closer. The pain that came next. The metal slamming thrust of 1,000,000 pounds of weight, trying but failing to slow down, to stop before it was too late. The pain wasn't tangible at all. Instead, it was sight. Slices of white icicles in frozen waterfalls, white waves out past the sand, white caps breaking against one another, the peaks and crests foaming and frothing just out of reach. Honey-colored sand, the midnight black of highway asphalt, and the silver of the car's bumper. And then finally, darkness. Heat blanketed me when I woke, red heat streaming across my face as I lay on the pavement, heat throbbing down my shoulder and firing through my legs. I heard voices, but far away and foggy under sirens, like whooshing in my ears, and someone screaming, screaming, screaming like I'd never heard before. I wanted to tell them to stop. The noise was too high, too loud, and too much. But when I tried to speak, nothing worked the way I wanted it to, and I realized the screams were mine. Voices calling out numbers, strong arms lifting me up and placing me down, the cool metal of scissors slicing through my clothes before the shutting of a door and the rocking back and forth beneath me. There was blackness, quiet finally, sleep maybe, and the crowd of faces I didn't recognize. Cream-colored walls, but not just cream, stripes of blue too, specks of green. Someone said, "Can you hear me? You're in the hospital, hun. You're okay." And then it went dark again. Whirs and rhythms of machines, thump, beep, 1, 2. Someone clamped a mask on me, a thing that smelled like my mother's cleaning supplies, a mask for breathing. So I went to the ship, that ship underground at my father's site in Soma, and I tried to rescue him on the stern in a hard hat and me with my mask, wearing my blue party dress. But I had arrived too late because the crane released its big crane arm and slammed me in the chest. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Beeping and ticking and cold liquid ice flushed through my arm. Daylight outside a window and clouds. The clouds a calm looking cream. Nighttime and daylight and nighttime again. The headache from the morning, the headache from all the days I've ever had a headache in my life. And that violent heat streaming across my face that never stopped, like white lightning. My mother standing over me as she brushed her fingers along my arm. Her in a chair by the window, her in the doorway, sitting on the bed, standing by the machine with thin tubes that stretched like tentacles to who knows where. My father was there also, but not there. Somewhere else where I couldn't quite see him clearly. He slumped, a thin shadow, in a sepia colored park as men in uniforms passed by, his suit 2 sizes too big, as he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a perfect piece of clear cut glass, triangular, jagged on one side, but smooth on the other too. In and out of sleep for days, it seemed, and then, finally, groggy while my mother helped me shower at the hospital, helped me dress, and helped me into a wheelchair once I was discharged to go home. I awoke in a car, nighttime and bleary from pain pills, lying across the back seat with my leg 1,000,000 pounds heavy and my face throbbing, still with blood red heat. A radio played something strong with horns, as if the jazz music were tapping inside my head. I counted the drum beats and searched for the rhythm to anchor me in the car, inside something real, but the trees past in the windows above me were blurred and watery. I closed my eyes and focused on not getting sick as the metallic tang of nausea fought its way out of my stomach and into my chest and up to my throat. I tried to talk, but my face felt boarded up like a plank of wood, and what I said ended up sounding like, baby, my mother said. I leaned to turn on my side so I could see her, but my body wouldn't work right. You're okay, she said. Stay still. We're in the car, almost home. I'm taking you home, she said. You're okay. I tried again. Was him? No, baby, she said. The body wasn't him.